Hey Shane, my man, good to be chatting again.
Yeah, yeah, good
Um,
to see you, brother.
yeah, we're just gonna keep these pretty informal and relaxed, like the last one was. And today, I thought we could talk about workout structure because that to me is something that's really close to my heart. I think a lot of people they feel they need a personal trainer or they need a follow along video or something like that, and I don't think those are bad resources, but if you know how to structure a workout properly, you pretty much you free yourself to becoming your own personal trainer, so it's a teach a man to fish thing, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, and for me, I just know that's something that's very seldom addressed when it comes to training. A lot of people want to know what exercises to do or how long to work out or what protocol to use, but they don't really know how to create a proper workout structure. So like, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's a million different ways to train, and it's good to constantly change it up. For me, I find that I've had a system I've been using for going on about 10 years now. Um, it's kind of all based around density training, and just for practical purposes, um, I think it's the most practical. You can adapt it. You can do different things with it. The method I was using, I called it cyclic accumulation training. And
Cyclic accumulation training.
yeah, the idea is I take, depending on where I'm at, physically and mentally even, I'll take 3 to 5 movement patterns, and I'll do reps anywhere from the 5 to 10 rep range. And then I'll do sets based on that. So if I'm just starting out, I might, let's say, just take 5 reps per movement, and I'll do somewhere between 8 and 10 sets of it. And I cycle my movement patterns with upper body, lower body, core. So,
Okay.
I try to do like a push, pull, hinge, and then some core worked in there as well, or push,
So
pull,
let's
squat.
just dive into it. When you say push pull hinge, you say hinge, you're referring to hip hinge. So
Correct.
any sort of bridging
Deadlift.
movement or squatting movement or okay.
Well, squat and hinge is different. Hinge would be more like
Okay.
a deadlift. Squat is its own movement pattern. And
Interesting.
so,
I did not know that. Can
yeah,
you just elaborate on the differences?
I mean, the hinge, you can imagine it in your mind where you're hinging at the hips, and
Okay.
that's what differentiates the deadlift from the squat. Your hips are, it's the angle of the movement with your hips, I suppose.
It's interesting because for me, whenever I do a squat, I try to engage or I try to incorporate a hip hinge as well. To me, my squat and my deadlift are almost identical.
Yeah, there's ways of doing that too. You can the way you angle your torso. I kind of do the same thing, especially if I'm using dumbbells or kettlebells. I do a
Mhm.
lot of Bulgarian split squats, as you know, and you can actually change the angle of that movement to where it becomes a little bit more of a hinge and less a squat. I feel, you know, I'm sure people have their theories on where that falls into that range. If it's more hinge or squat, I guess it'd be
Mhm.
considered more squat, but you can change that based on the angle of your upper body in relation to your lower
Okay.
body, and how the hip integrates.
Yeah, I mean that's it's interesting to me because well, let's come back to that. First of all, I just
Mhm.
wanted to clarify when I was speaking of, and I'm glad you've described this protocol. I think it's to me I need a fresh protocol because I've just been using the same old bodybuilding, you know, 3 to 5 sets per exercise of 8 to 12
Mhm.
reps. I've been using that for a long time. It's getting a little bit stale for me.
And
But
it
when I
works.
was talking, it does work, yeah, for
Yeah.
hypertrophy, I guess. I mean, what I was talking about specifically when it came to workout structure is a lot of my perspective on physical training comes from a book I read many years ago called The Science of Sports Training
Mhm.
by a gentleman, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was his name's Thomas Kurtz. And he says that a good workout, a well-structured workout, always follows this formula, which is you start with a warm-up, which usually consists of joint rotations followed by some kind of cyclic aerobic activity like skipping, stationary bike, or something that's just a repetitive movement just to get the blood flowing. Then you do the main part of the workout, which I'm guessing your what was the thing called? Cyclic something
Cyclic
training?
accumulation training.
Cyclic accumulation training, or
Yeah.
your bodybuilding workout, or whatever it might be. And then the final thing is the cool down, which involves static stretching, and just like, bringing the systems of the body like back down from their overstimulated state. And so I guess that's kind of what I was interested in, is what you feel about that. Do you feel, because I noticed you don't really warm up that much, or I haven't noticed you warm up that much. Is that because your body's so well tuned, or...
No, that's called lazy. Just me being lazy. Plain and simple. I mean, I hate working out most of the time. It kind of depends on where I'm at, especially first getting back into it. It's a painful process. And right now it's been, over a month since I really trained, and I mean, I'll go take my hikes and I'll get out and do my walks and stuff just to, get some air, get some sunlight. But mentally it's been tough. It's been a stressful period. And, I found that I'm carrying enough stress right now, and just the thought of adding more additional stress, it just feels like it would be wearing me down. Now that's, I don't want to sound like as an excuse, because it is a little bit, I should be doing more, but I'm just taxed right now.
I'm interested. So when you say stress, so it's something a lot of people may not be aware of, is that a workout is a stress on your system.
Correct.
Right? It's a stress on the organism.
Yeah.
And even though a lot of the times we're told that exercise relieves stress, and yes, it does. It's a mental stress that it relieves, but it can increase a physiological stress, right? Which too much of causes.
Yeah, it'll raise your cortisol while you're training. I mean, it's one of those things. Again, I should be training more. I should be doing. I'm trying to do what feels right now, which is to get out and walk and do the things that are a little bit, that are relieving the stress. Like I said, I definitely need to be hitting it more. But
interesting that you say that, because for me, for many people, I think as well, exercise has become a thing that it's an obligation, right? And it's something that people feel guilty if they don't do, which, I think it's probably better to err on the side of doing it rather than not doing it. Most people exercise far too little. I totally think that there's something to it. But now sometimes, for a large portion of my life, and a workout was a production, dude. It was a full-on fucking production, because there was like a 15 to 20-minute warm-up, as I said, because that was the way I was programming it. I was following the structure. You do this very comprehensive warm-up so you don't get injured, and to prepare your tissues for the more intense stuff. Then you do the main part, which is 45 minutes to an hour. Then you do 15 to 20 minutes of stretching. And I mean, it would usually end up being like a 2-hour thing, right? And it was to psych yourself up for something like that. I mean, even now, just thinking about it, it's tiring. And what I've realized is that isn't the only way to exercise. I mean, taking a long walk, it doesn't even have to be a strenuous hike. Like sometimes I just walk for a few miles a day, and that's my exercise, and it works for me. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it doesn't always have to be difficult and extremely taxing and destroy the body, right? Or break the body down.
No, it can be beneficial, but I don't want people thinking that walking is necessarily like adequate exercise, because it's not. It's good for stress relief. It's good to get air, and it's obviously good just to move. But people, I know a lot of people who will just walk and think that they're exercising, and they continue to gain weight, and they're stuck. And that's because you really do need the right exertion. You need a certain amount of exertion to get the benefits. So for me, going back to what you were saying about the warm up and everything, man, when I'm training, I want to get the most juice out of the squeeze, right? And so my idea of a warm up is more like isometric holds. And so let's say I'm going to do, for instance, 10 sets of, 3 to 4 movements, right? The first 3 rounds, the first round I'll do just isometrics. And so I'll do like a 60-second hold for each movement pattern. And so I'll do, basically like a plank hold or a half push-up. I'll do a squat hold, even like a pull-up, right? Just going up and doing like a real slow negative, kind of to let my tissues adapt. If I were doing it right, I'd probably do something more dynamic too, like skipping or something to kind of get my nervous system keyed up. But, like I said, I'm lazy. I try to knock it out. And when I'm actually doing this, and I found the best way for me to get back into it. Now I'm 42. I have to be a little bit more careful. I have to warm up a little bit more properly, do a little bit more isometric work, earlier in the workout, as opposed to just like 1 or 2 sets. I should probably be doing 3 or 4. But I'm able to jump in, and the idea I have is, I go through my push pull, hinge, squat, core, whatever. I try to get those movement patterns all covered. And then once I get to the fourth or fifth set, then I try to make it more dynamic, more explosive. And then I eventually move into clap push-ups, jump squats with 100% effort. And
plyometric stuff.
The plyometrics, I think, are the best way to go. Bang for your buck. It gets your nervous system keyed up. You feel good. You get a lot, you get a lot out of the workload too. And so
the thing for me with plyometrics is, whenever you add speed to a movement, like you increase the possibility of injury. I think especially I've noticed, like, that's one of the reasons I don't really enjoy CrossFit and stuff, is all those things like box jumps and that kind of stuff. I could instinctively feel it wasn't good for my body. Like, I just knew that, like, it just wasn't good for me.
I disagree, but you have to warm up into it. So if you can do those box jumps, you can't just go in. The thing that I get concerned with is when I see people doing the box jumps and they're jumping up, jumping down, jumping up, jumping down. And a lot of people don't land very softly. They're not allowing their calves and quads and glutes to take the impact as they're coming down. They don't use it as like a spring. And so they'll land rigid, they're jamming their knees. They're doing, I think, more damage than good.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's all just a question of technique and doing things properly, right? I was just in the gym this morning and there's this guy doing, and I was happy he was in the gym, but I could just see he was doing like a lat pull down, and his form was so poor. A part of me just wanted to say to him, I mean, it was not my place, but I just wanted to say, dude, like, you should learn to do that properly or you're just wasting your time, right? Like, it's
I mean, the fact he's in there doing it is good, but you see those guys who are like swinging it, they're leaning into it and they're using momentum to pull it down. They're not isolating, they're doing, fast up, fast down, there's no negative, and they're dropping the weight. And, the negative is the best part of the movement. That's where you build your strength, and that's where, you learn control. It's great to be explosive through it. And this, I don't want to contradict what I was just saying about the plyometrics, but, typically when I'm doing my plyos, it's a lot of, concentric and less eccentric. I'm not going slow down, I'm kind of pushing through it, because the way I have it set up with the accumulation training is my rest periods are typically 30 seconds to a minute in between each round. So I'll do, let's say my 4 movement patterns. I rush through those as fast as I can to get my heart rate up and treat it like a sprint. And then my rest is, like I said, 30-second to 1 minute period. If I'm just doing isometrics for the first couple of warm-up rounds, I don't take any rest in between. I just move all the way through. As soon as I start going into the more plyometric movements and more explosive, and when there's more energy output, then I allow myself up to a minute of rest in between each round. And so the whole workout lasts between 20 and 25 minutes. My goal is to keep it under 25 minutes, and that's done.
And why is that because of growth hormone suppression that drops off after that? Or?
Yeah, I think it's over 35 minutes and you start to see a decrease in growth hormone. And, I just feel like that's been my sweet spot. 10 sets, it's an easy number. You're not getting carried away. I mean, when I'm peaking in that, as I build my strength and my endurance, I'll cut my rest time. I can add additional weight. I'll throw in like a 20-pound, or I think my weight vest is 40 pounds. I'll throw in a weight vest and do the movements with that. Or I'll increase my set range. And so I'll go all the way up to 15 sets. So like when I'm, this is 10 years ago, but when I was in like really, really good shape, I was doing 15 sets of 15 reps each. And that was like, pull-ups, clap push-ups, jump squats with 50-pound dumbbells. I found
that's a lot. That's a hell of a lot of reps. 15 reps of,
But I mean, we're talking, I worked up to this over a year and I was already in pretty good shape. And so, again, it takes time to develop. You can get injured doing it that way, which is what makes me nervous about CrossFit. I feel like a lot of the movements just aren't. It's one thing to get the maximum performance out of your body, and it's another thing to do it within a range that's safe. And I think a lot of people just go a little too crazy in there and they get hurt. And there's just better ways of.
Yeah, for me, that's a huge thing. Like my primary objective when training is to not get injured, right? Because if you get injured, there's no more training. And it's not to lift as much weight as I can or to push myself as hard as I can. That's none of it. It's to be safe, right? I mean, if you don't have that, then so coming back, because I just really want to explore this topic a little bit more in depth. I mean, you're a specimen, dude. Like there's no, I mean, I know you don't like people saying that and stuff, but you're a very highly trained uh, individual with, you know, great bone structure. You're very mesomorphic. You're just a good physical specimen. You're not the typical, right? So if, let's say there's a soccer mom at home who's 35 and she's out of shape and she wants to start training, or there's a dude who's, you know, 15 or 17 and he's just getting used to resistance training and working out, like what would you say, like how would you say a good workout is structured? Like I'm looking for a general template for them to follow.
I mean, I would stick to the same template, honestly. I would incorporate more isometrics, obviously, more static holds.
As part of the warm-up.
Yeah, and just and as you become more comfortable with that, as you become more trained and you become more efficient, then you can start moving into more like full range movements, but nothing too explosive, obviously, nothing too radical, you know, and just having something like a medicine ball to use. You know, those things are great. They're really practical. They're not a lot of weight, but you can get a lot out of them, especially shoulder movements. You can do push-ups on them. You can do sit-ups with them. You know, you can just do a lot with it. You don't need a lot of tools. You can do it in your house. You know, and it's almost, you know, I don't do yoga. It's just not something I enjoy. I know you love it, and a lot of people do. But what I do like doing is taking some basic yoga movements and then moving through them as repetitive, like, geez, what is it? The
up dog, down dog type thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And because it's so good for your core. And essentially, you're doing the same thing as if you would be doing sit-ups or any kind of like.
It's like a rep. It's like a rep, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'll use that. I always called them pikeys, and so you do these pikes, and I find that it's really effective for building core strength. You don't need anything else for it. You know, you don't need a fancy ab machine or something. It builds plenty of strength. You can do, you know, those side planks, but you can turn them into reps. So you touch your hip to the ground and you push your hip to the sky.
Okay.
And just those little things, you know, believe it or not, you don't need a lot to it. You don't need to do, you know, 30 or 40 or 50 reps. The idea of the accumulation training is you're doing a small number of reps, but it accumulates over each set. And so while the first 5 sets might even seem kind of easier, like, oh, I'm easily doing, you know, 6 to 10 of these movements or whatever, or 6 to 10 reps. By the time you start getting up to like 8, 9, 10 sets, and if you decide to go higher, 12, if it's not effective yet, add some more sets in. By the time you start getting to the higher set range, man, you're pretty cooked. The good thing about it is
workouts before. I've been pretty cooked.
But it doesn't tax your nervous system the same way. You know, when I go lift heavy weights in the gym, and I like going, I mean, when the gym is open here on the island, you know, I'll go in, I'll do 2.5 hours in there because I just like being in there, and I tend to overdo it a little bit. But when I come out, man, I'm crushed because I'm just, you know, you get obsessive in there and you just want to lift and have fun. And the thing I like about this body weight style of training, you come out of it feeling more energetic than you went in.
Sure. And that's a principle that I believe a lot of people need to really internalize, which is that exercise should leave you feeling energized, not exhausted.
Yeah.
Right. And there's this thing in our culture, I don't even know where it comes from, but it's this idea that like a workout should destroy you, right? You should be ruined afterwards. And it's fucked up. There's just no other way to put it. It's not intelligent, right? It's not like your body is not designed. You're not a workhorse, right? You're a human being, right?
It depends on where you're at in your life and what you're trying to accomplish. If you've got goals, then yeah, man, beat yourself down, but also allow yourself to rest. And when you have those big workouts, you know, be forgiving to yourself. Don't go back and try to do it again the next day or the day after. Give yourself 4 or 5 days off. You know, if you're first training and you have one of those big, heavy days, take a week off if you need to. Control your intake, you know, don't go binge crazy and eat a bunch of carbs afterwards because now you're starving because you overdid it. You have to be disciplined in your approach.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that really reminded me of this is we were watching UFC last time I was at your place, and we were discussing, I asked what happened to Cain Velasquez, who was he light heavyweight or heavyweight champion?
He was heavyweight.
Heavyweight, yeah. I mean, he was such a beast, and then his career it just nosedived, right? And I think you said it's because his strength and conditioning protocol wasn't right.
Yeah, I saw him doing like leg extensions, which is already rough on your knees. And whoever he was training with, had a ton of weight stacked on there and he's just going crazy with the reps. And it's like, you know, when you're at that level, the one thing you don't want to do is get injured. You should be doing things that, you know, again, you want to get the most bang for your buck out of it without risking injury to your body. And that just seemed dangerous and foolish. And it's the same goes for those guys who go in and train like a shooter box, where they used to go in and just bang all day, and you're cracking each other and you get really tough and you learn how to, you know, fight through these really difficult moments. But at the same time, your career is cut short because now you have, you know, TBI.
Sure.
And
that's the same. It's the same when it comes to getting in shape and being healthy. Is you can get in shape very quickly by doing some very hard stuff and overtraining, but that window of time that you'll stay in that shape is very short, because sooner or later your body will break down, or you're producing so much cortisol that it's going to cause like that huge stress response, or your tissues are going to start tearing, or et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's interesting, Shane. So let's like actionable advice for someone who wants to start training on their own, and structuring a workout. I mean, maybe we could put these two things together. This one understanding of mine that you start with generally a warm-up, which is some joint rotations, you know, like moving each joint through its full range of motion, you know, head, neck, shoulders, hips, knees, etc. And then you do 5 minutes of cyclic activity, like skipping or stationary bike or something, just to get the blood pumping, and as you said, key up the nervous system. And then the main part of the workout could be cyclic accumulation training, right? A cyclic accumulation training workout. And that workout would be 10 sets of 5 reps of four different movements.
Yeah, you know, I would recommend for somebody just getting into it, I would pick three movement patterns. Yeah.
Which is a push, a pull, and a squats or a hinge.
Yeah, exactly. I would choose either a squat or a hinge, and then you need a push pull. And you can do a little core work in there, but start with 3: push, pull, squat, or hinge. And I would start just depending on where your base fitness is, even as low as 3 reps. And when you're doing those 3 reps, they should be very slow and controlled, you know, 5 seconds down, you know, hold, and then back up with a little bit more speed. You can look into cadence training. There's different cadences for different methods of training. But yeah, the most important thing would be the negative, just controlling your body weight down and then going through that, allowing your body some rest between each period, depending on how winded you are. But I think that's the easiest way to do it, just to get started, and you'll feel good, and you'll do it. And it'll take 25 minutes. And even if you do 3 reps and you do, let's say 8 sets, you're getting, you know, 24 reps total out of the entire movement. So be it. You work up from there, and then you add, you know, an additional rep, an additional set, whatever you need to do. But find a place where you find that you're excited to do it, where it's not mentally exhausting just thinking about going and doing it. Like today, even talking about it now, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna hit my pull-ups, I'm gonna do some push-ups because I'm motivated now and I'm feeling good. Even talking about it, I realize like how little, you know, it's much more digestible. You know what I'm saying? It's more palatable to do it that way than to go, okay, well, I'm gonna go do some crazy cardio class, because, like, you know, I watch a lot of women do these cardio classes, and it's like, it's great that you're moving, it's great that you're sweating, but if you're not using resistance and you're not challenging your muscles, you know, you're not going to get the same kind of muscle growth. It's going to be harder to burn the fat. The more muscle, I think a lot of women are too concerned with putting on muscle, and they don't realize that you require that muscle in order to burn the fat off as well. If you don't have muscle, it's really hard to burn calories.
Yeah, I mean, there's something else related to that, which is that a lot of women don't understand that unless they're taking supplemental hormones, their body isn't going to have that propensity to make them big and bulky, right? Obviously, your muscles will get a little bit bigger and a little bit more defined, but it's going to be very, very difficult as a woman to put on too much muscle unless, you know, you're having a little bit of chemical resistance on that.
Totally. It's hard for guys. Think about how hard it is for guys who bust their ass every single day. For me, I'm not a small guy, but I'm not gargantuan by any means. And I just can't get, you know, I cap out if I'm lifting as hard as I can and heavy as I can, and I'm eating a ton, you know, and I'm not carving up and doing a bunch of things, but the maximum I'm hitting is 225 for my body weight. And I typically walk around about 215 to 220, lifting moderately, you know, pretty hard, nothing crazy, you know, 3 days a week. my diet keeps me in shape, fortunately, and doing the accumulation training is enough cardio for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, I
But
think we should address that in another video, that it's largely a function of diet, how
yeah,
good of a shape you're in. And exercise is probably the secondary thing you should start looking at, right? When you want to
correct.
change your body composition. But I
Yeah,
mean, I guess that's a whole different topic for another
yeah,
day.
it's a can
So
of worms.
just to round it out, so it's, you do your warm up, then you do your cyclic accumulation training, which would include a push, a pull, and a squat or a hinge
Just to start.
movement. Yeah, starting with 3 to 5 reps,
Yep.
and you just run through the exercise. So you do your, let's say, body weight squat, push up, and then a pull would be like maybe a
Pull
kettlebell swing
or
or a pull up
row.
or a row.
Well, the swing would be more of a hinging. That's more posterior chain.
Okay. I was just thinking like
Yeah,
with the little retraction at the top of the movement. Like that's what I use it, because it's, for me, I've actually found it's very difficult without a pull-up bar to get a pulling movement in with a body weight exercise. And
your
so
bands work really well.
yeah, bands would work. I guess
Yeah.
that's a good. Okay, so so we've got a body weight squat, a push up, and then like maybe a band row or something like
A
that.
band row, a dumbbell row.
Dumbbell row, yeah.
And you know, I've even, like, when I've gotten desperate, I've just done pulls against doorways, single arm pulls. You know, if you can get your fingers in
Oh,
the door,
okay.
you have to find ways to make it work if you don't have something. And off the top of my head, I can't really remember what else I've used, but I mean, you know, I was doing security. I was with a client in New York for 6 weeks in this house, and there was nothing. I found a ladder, I found some towels, and I did pull-ups with towels on the ladder. And I did, you know, my
Awesome.
rows from there. I did my push-ups, and I did jump squats up and down the stairs. You find what you
You
can.
find, yeah, use what you can where you are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And then at the end of that, some kind of like very gentle stretching to start bringing the nervous system back down.
That's a good time to, like, actually go for a walk, in my opinion,
A
you know, after
walk,
you've done it.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, just cool down, just focus on getting good breaths in, enjoying the tranquility of being outside, you know, get your sun in, get good air in your lungs, and just decompress a little bit. When you come back, then it's time for, and you know, in my opinion, that's when you're coming back, and then you take a steam or you take a hot shower, eat a good meal, you know. You know, I try to wait like 20 to 30 minutes after training before I eat, just to allow everything to kind of calm down, chill out, and then you want to put some good fuel in your body if you haven't.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, no, that sounds, I never thought about taking the walk afterwards, but it makes sense because the walking engages your parasympathetic nervous system,
Mhm.
right? And starts the healing process. That's a really good little tip. I'm going to start doing that. Cool, Shane. That was fun. I look forward
Yeah,
to the next one, man. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And as usual, if you're watching, you want to find out more about us and what we do, check out 100%.health.